I'm gonna The subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, all members may have 5 days to submit statements, questions, and extraneous materials for the record, subject to the length limitation in the rules. The purpose of this hearing is to examine the budget for the Department of State Counterterrorism Bureau FY 2017. I have a lengthy opening statement, but without objection, I'll make it a part of the record and make some brief comments. The purpose of this is to determine the Counterterrorism Bureau's budget. Terrorism is on the rise throughout the world in different places, especially with ISIS. In any event, the administration has asked for a reduction in the Counterterrorism Bureau budget, even though that, to me, is counterproductive in the sense that terrorism is on the rise. On the other hand, my concern is about evaluations that have or have not been made by the success of what the Counterterrorism Bureau is doing or not doing. Personally, I'm not satisfied that the evaluation of how the money's being spent and what we're doing is working. So the purpose of this hearing is to examine both of those, whether the budget should be cut or raised, and whether the evaluations are being produced, and what are those evaluations, the results of those evaluations. Without objection, I'll allow now the former ranking member of the committee, Mr. Sherman, to make an opening statement. California, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'll use my opening statement to renew the plea I've been making at the for the State Department for at least 5 years, and that is that you employ a few individuals who are hired solely for their knowledge of Islamic jurisprudence, Islamic history, and Islamic law. To think that we can combat Islamic extremist terrorism without a single person at the State Department who's memorized the Quran means that we don't understand the mental world, the theological world that our potential adversaries live in. We have a State Department with people who think that you can show the evil of al-Baghdadi if you can show him personally executing a defenseless Yazidi. The fact is, they'll put that up on their webpage as a recruitment tool. We need people who understand that if you could just get a picture of him eating a ham sandwich, that would undermine ISIS and its recruiting ability. I remember the conflict between the United States and Indonesia over whether Indonesia would give us samples of avian flu, and called an Islamic scholar who said, well, we would turn to the hadith about what the Prophet said about rabies, which is, after all, just another virus that infects an animal. That's not the kind of knowledge that you can get at Princeton. Woodrow Wilson did a great job. He did not memorize the Quran. And so we need State Department people to be able to have access on site to that kind of scholarship and to an understanding of Islamic jurisprudence that is every bit as sophisticated as the knowledge we have on the Vienna Convention of the Law of Treaties and why the Habsburgs took this or that position in the negotiations in 18 whatever, when that we have a Eurocentric body of knowledge in a very smart State Department, and we're going to have to hire hire just a few people who would never pass the test because it's written by the Woodrow Wilson School and instead could pass the test to demonstrate a real knowledge of Islam. With that, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The chair recognizes the ranking member, the gentleman from Massachusetts, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for conducting this hearing. I'd also like to thank our witness, Mr. Siberol, for being here to discuss the State Department's Counterterrorism Bureau. In our country's fight against terrorism, one indelible truth has been stated over and over, and it's in order to truly degrade and ultimately defeat foreign terrorist organizations like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, we need a whole government effort approach. The capacity building programs funded and coordinated by the State Department's Counterterrorism Bureau are the types of activities in which our government must continue to engage if we're to be successful in achieving the Bureau's mission of forging partnerships with our partners at home and abroad in counterterrorism, law enforcement, counter-threat financing, counter-radicalization efforts, border security, and restricting terrorist travel. Undoubtedly, the Bureau's work to accomplish these critical objectives, while the State Department has revamped its efforts to tackle one of the hardest aspects of counterterrorism, and that is combating violent extremism. The new Center for Global Engagement is attempting to effectively coordinate, integrate, and synchronize messaging to foreign audiences that undermines the disinformation espoused by violent extremist groups. To be sure, this is not an easy task, and we'll hear in detail from Mr. Siberol on the challenges facing the Bureau. I'm particularly interested in hearing how leadership has addressed in a Government Accountability Office report released last year on resources, performance, and coordination within the Bureau. Finally, it's vital that we ensure that funds appropriated to the Counterterrorism Bureau for these capacity-building programs are being used wisely, and the United States is getting a good return on its investment. As I stated at the beginning, the Counterterrorism Bureau plays a critical role in our fight against terrorism, particularly with regards to interagency and regional collaboration. I look forward to hearing from our witness today and to discuss the issues that will ensue. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Without objection, the witness's prepared statement will be made part of the record. I ask that the witness keep the presentation to no more than 5 minutes. I'll introduce the witness that we have. Mr. Justin Siberol is the acting coordinator for the Bureau of Counterterrorism at the State Department. He is a career member of the Senior Foreign Service, and before joining the CT Bureau, he served as a principal officer in Dubai, and he's also worked in Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, and Panama. So thank you for being here, and you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Poe, Ranking Member Keating, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. This afternoon, I'd like to briefly highlight the Bureau of Counterterrorism's work to advance the foremost counterterrorism priorities of the United States. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, I have submitted a longer statement for the record. As you know, the United States faces a fluid and fast-changing terrorist threat environment. The international community has made progress in degrading terrorist safe havens, but terrorist groups, especially ISIL and Al-Qaeda, remain resilient. Recent attacks in Bamako, Beirut, Brussels, Jakarta, and Paris have demonstrated the reach and continued determination of these groups to commit violence against civilians. These and other attacks have raised the urgency and political will of our partners to act against the evolving threat posed by ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and their affiliates. President Obama has called for the United States to develop more effective partnerships around the world to confront, disrupt, and defeat the global threat from terrorism. The Bureau of Counterterrorism is playing a critical role in developing those partnerships. The success of U.S. counterterrorism efforts increasingly depends upon capable civilian partners, police, prosecutors, border and aviation security personnel, prison officials, and community leaders. As with our own domestic experience, these actors are on the front lines in preventing and responding to terrorism in their communities. The Bureau is leading efforts to build capacity and cooperation among these very civilian actors. We appreciate the Congress's appropriation of $175 million for the Counterterrorism Partnerships Fund in fiscal year 2016. We ask for your continued support in fiscal year 2017. With these resources, we will strengthen the ability of key law enforcement and criminal justice actors from the Sahel to Southeast Asia. We are focusing on supporting countries that can help prevent ISIL's global expansion while not losing sight of al-Qaeda and its affiliates. We are also expanding our engagement with European partners to ensure they enhance capabilities to stem the flow of foreign terrorist fighters, improve information sharing, and disrupt local terrorist recruitment networks. We believe these efforts are yielding results. Since 2014, 45 countries with which we have engaged have passed new laws or updated existing laws to address foreign terrorist fighters. Through the Bureau's diplomatic efforts, we now have enhanced information sharing arrangements with 55 countries to assist efforts to identify, track, and deter the travel of known and suspected terrorists. We have also supported Interpol to enhance its ability to share critical foreign terrorist fighter identity data with countries around the world. 58 countries plus the United Nations now contribute foreign terrorist fighter profiles to Interpol. As part of our fiscal year 2017 request, we have also asked for additional funding for our terrorist interdiction program. This program provides a highly valuable capability for countries to strengthen border controls through enhanced technology and training. Mr. Chairman, as part of our overall strategy, we believe that we must increase our focus on preventing the spread of violent extremism, to stop the radicalization, recruitment, and mobilization of people, especially young people, to engage in terrorist activities. Secretary Kerry has directed the Bureau of Counterterrorism to play the lead role in a more strategic, integrated, and ultimately accountable approach to countering violent extremism. As notified to the Congress, the Department is increasing personnel resources in the Bureau to support this mission and renaming the Bureau as the Bureau of Counterterrorism and Countering Violent Extremism. We will be working very closely with the newly established Interagency Global Engagement Center and USAID in this effort. The Department has also requested additional resources for CVE programming in fiscal year 2017, including as part of the Counterterrorism Partnerships Fund to expand programs to help counter violent extremist recruitment and messaging. Finally, Mr. Chairman, as documented in our statement for the record, we have made changes within the Bureau over the past year to foster a culture of strategic planning, learning, innovation, and collaboration. We've enhanced the monitoring and evaluation of our foreign assistance programming, especially our largest programs. Since I last testified before this committee, we have launched a comprehensive third-party evaluation of our anti-terrorism assistance program. That evaluation will be completed later this month. We have also awarded a new third-party evaluation of our CVE programs. We look forward to briefing you and your staff on the results of these evaluations. Mr. Chairman, there's much more work to do. The terrorism landscape is dynamic, and we must continue to enhance and adapt our efforts. I am proud of what we are accomplishing in the Bureau of Counterterrorism. We have a talented team of people who are committed to the work of countering terrorism and keeping their country safe. We greatly appreciate the interest of Congress and your committee in support of these efforts. I look forward to your questions and our discussion. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. The House is in the midst of a voting series of votes, so the subcommittee will recess until 5 minutes after the last vote has ended. So the subcommittee is in recess. We'll reconvene 5 minutes after the last vote has ended. Subcommittee will come to order. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes for a few questions. I have 3 questions, and we have 5 minutes to get the questions and the answers. So our first question is, the administration maintains that counterterrorism is a top priority, but why is the administration wanting a budget cut?
Mr. Chairman, I think if you look at the annual requests that go from fiscal year 15, 16, 17, you'll find a significant increase in the 17 request from our 15 budget. And the reason is that we received a significant increase in 16 under the Counterterrorism Partnerships Fund, an additional $175 million that we are working now to develop a sound process for stewardship of those additional funds, and we very much appreciate the Congress support for that program. For 17, when we put together our request, we looked at what we believed it would be required to sustain those efforts, those increased efforts in 16, and we would determine that an $80 million request was adequate for that purpose, and we, bearing in mind that we want to ensure effective stewardship of those funds. So we have the 175 and 16 additional, and then we've asked for 80 additional and 17. So it may appear to be a decrease from the 16 request because we're asking for less under CTPF from 17 than we received in 16. But overall, it's a significant increase. I mean, we are talking about the comparison of our request in 17 from what our budget was in 15 is a more than $50 million increase in our counterterrorism capacity building foreign assistance budget.
Okay, we're not reading the same statistics, or at least I'm not reading them the same way you are. The Counterterrorism Bureau wants 31% less money than last year. Is that correct or not?
Well, I would characterize it as our effort to sustain this significant increase we received in 16, and I'll put it that way.
I mean, is it, well, put it this way, is it 31% less than last year or not? I don't want to be argumentative, but I need a yes or no.
Sure. The $80 million we requested is less than the 175 we received in 16 under the CTPF, yes.
The administration promised in 2011 that they would have a strategy to combat terrorist use of social media, 2011. When is that strategy going to be produced? Because it hasn't been produced. Do you know?
The administration is working very closely internally in the United States government with the domestic agencies, the FBI, Department of Justice, others.
Excuse me again.
Yes.
Do you know when that's going to be done?
Is this a strategy you're referring to from the State Department? I missed the beginning of
Yes.
the question.
On online radicalization by the terrorist use of social media. And we were going to have a strategy to combat that. And the administration promised this in 2011. We don't have it.
Okay.
When's it going to happen?
Right. So we have a strategy on countering violent extremism that we are preparing to release between the State Department and USAID that does, as one of its objectives, address the need for effective counter-messaging and counter-narratives. And that is one of the 5 objectives in that strategy that is to be released within the coming week.
Within a week?
That's the State Department, USAID, Countering Violent Extremism strategy, joint strategy.
All right, and the last question is, GAO reported that the CT Bureau has not evaluated its countering violent extremism program, despite the Bureau saying since 2012 it would evaluate the program. When is that going to happen?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. In our hearing last year, we discussed the importance of evaluation of CT Bureau-funded foreign assistance programs, and you emphasized the importance of this, and we have taken that very seriously. We have undertaken a number of evaluations, including we have put out a notice of funding for a comprehensive third-party evaluation of our countering violent extremism programs in 3 countries, Indonesia, Kenya, and Bangladesh. That is been out for funding. It's being awarded now, and we expect that evaluation will be completed by the end of this year.
So the GAO, their answer would, I mean, it hadn't happened yet, and your answer is that it'll be done by the end of the year. There'll be an evaluation.
Yes.
The combating terrorism, I think we can all agree to the fact that it's important because terrorism is on the rise. Tell me why we should justify the CT Bureau. Why should Congress justify its existence? Try to keep it simple, if you would.
Sure. I think it's a very good question. I appreciate the opportunity to answer. People often think of counterterrorism as a mission for law enforcement agencies in the domestic realm or for the military or intelligence agencies in the international realm. In fact, diplomacy plays a key role in bringing together partnerships and nations to address our primary counterterrorism objectives. We see that in the coalitions that we build to defeat terrorist groups on a regional, sub-regional basis, or even a global basis. So the Global Coalition to fight ISIL is an example. The coalition of African partners we've developed to fight Boko Haram in West Africa. The coalition of nations we've helped to develop to fight al-Shabaab in East Africa. Those are just examples of where diplomacy plays a key role, and the Bureau of Counterterrorism leads in a number of those efforts to build international will, political will, and partnership and cooperation against these common threats. The other piece of what we do, and we appreciate, again, the funding we receive from Congress for this purpose, is to help build capacity in our primary counterterrorism partners. In line with the President's policy of developing strong partnerships under the Counterterrorism Partnership Fund, we are helping to build capacity among our partners across the civilian agencies. So not just and our DoD colleagues handle that on the military side, but we help to build improved CT legislation, improved judicial capability to prosecute terror suspects, improved border security measures, and improved civilian security agencies. All of those programs are supported or funded through the support you provide to our Bureau, and that's what we execute in our foreign assistance. So on the one level, we're working diplomatically to build coalitions to address our terrorism challenges, and then we are trying to build capacity in our partners to address those in the regions from which these threats emanate.
Thank you. The Chair recognizes the ranking member, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week I was in Tunisia, and the situation there was described in terms of dealing with terrorist issues there by the President himself as fragile, a term he used in our conversation at least 10 times by my count. And you're looking at a country like that that's struggling to do so many things. And he kept impressing on us, too, and I've seen it in other countries, particularly in that region, where they're getting stressed. Leaders are, particularly leaders that are trying to move forward in a way that improves democracy. The economic issue is just squeezing them on one end in terms of support. Some of the other changes that languish, too, are a problem. How is the Bureau working, to coordinate not only counterterrorism, but also rule of law issues? How do they factor that in, economic issues? Because I don't think there'll be a lasting effort with this without a strong collaboration on all of those issues.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. With Tunisia, I agree entirely that that is a country that is passing through a very important political transition, but that has caused significant fragility within the governance system. And you can absolutely correlate the rise of terrorist groups to failures in governance in certain parts of the world, and certainly in North Africa and the Middle East. And we see that in Libya, obviously, in Yemen, and other places where the government has collapsed and the terrorist groups rise. So it's absolutely important that we help the Tunisian government through this transition, and that absolutely includes economic support to assist the government to ensure that their economy produces the jobs and hopes and opportunities for young people that have high expectations from this political transition. Our counterterrorism assistance is also robust with the Tunisian government and has grown. They face a significant threat from regional groups like Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb who come out of Algeria and have brought threats into Tunisia. Of course, we've seen the attacks on the museum and the tourist site in Sousse. Those were planned by individuals in Libya. Yes. So this is a country under assault, effectively, from these terrorist groups, and it does require a comprehensive response from us.
Yeah, I think they deserve great credit for what they're trying to do, but they are definitely in a very tenuous situation doing it. Let me just shift quickly. Twitter requested last week as well, one of its partners, data miner,
a service that offers advanced social media analytics and early detection of major events like terrorist attacks, to stop providing intelligence agencies with their tools and their content. Does this affect the relationship with the CT or with the Bureau of Global Engagement at all, these kind of actions?
Is this, I'm sorry, sir, the action is to restrict the sharing of information with
Yes, with law enforcement agencies.
Well, I think we rely upon a cooperative relationship with the social media companies, and that is primarily the work in our domestically of the FBI, Department of Justice. A cooperative relationship is important because those companies, through their terms of service, are in the best position to identify content which can be helpful to those groups in radicalization and recruitment.
In terms of content, do you ever use testimonials from foreign fighters who've come back and disillusioned?
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, the Global Engagement Center, to which you just referred, has launched several thematic campaigns to amplify messaging, including they ran a campaign of formers or defectors, those who had gone off to Iraq and Syria, had a disillusioning experience, and then were putting their testimonials on social media as a way to push back and counter the narrative that ISIL has put out about its caliphate.
Again, on messaging, and it's too bad I can't, we're limited with time, but on messaging, are you using women and community-based projects? Well, Denmark just advanced a program where it's concentrating on a network of mothers to identify early signs. Are you engaged in that, and how successful has that been?
Well, there's two things I can point to. One is another one of the thematic campaigns that the GEC ran, which was centered around families and the impact upon families of those who have gone off to fight for these terrorist groups. And that was a very effective campaign, and it did focus in large part on mothers and the role in the family. The second is we have undertaken in a number of our countering violent extremism programs a focus on women, because as you noted, women are in a unique position in most communities to identify the signs of radicalization or the infiltration of ideas and ideology of the terrorist groups. So they are a primary recipient of our countering violent extremism programming effort. I'll also say, however, that they're difficult to reach because this is at the community level, and we have to get our programming down to that level, and that's why we work with partners like USAID, who have the connections in many cases through their development work to reach women and build networks of women, which they have a history also of doing in many parts of the world successfully.
Just lastly, I'll give you a chance. The GAO reported recently that there were staffing positions that weren't filled and recommended that they be filled. What's the status of that right now?
Well, we have 102 authorized full-time employment positions in the Bureau of Counterterrorism, 93 of which are filled. That leaves 9 vacancies, and of those 9 vacancies, 8 are in the process of being filled or being advertised. So I think we're doing a pretty good job in addressing what the GAO had found in the last several years. The Bureau was established as a result of the 2011 QDDR, really became a Bureau in 2012. We were allotted a surge of new positions, and it did take some time for the Bureau to process through those, but we've done that, and now we're in fairly good shape in our hiring.
Yeah, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank the gentleman from Massachusetts. The chair will recognize the gentleman from California, Colonel Cook, for his questioning.
Thank you very much, sir. I wanted to ask you about Libya and the decisions that are going to be made about arming certain individuals. And of course, the fear is, here we go again. Are we giving this to ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever acronym you want to use or whatever you called? And my fear with the State Department or any is that the right hand does not talk to the left hand in terms of coordinating this information, so we make an informed choice and then we regret it afterwards. Can you briefly comment on that?
Thank you, Congressman. In Libya, it's a very difficult, fluid situation, as you've noted, basically chaotic, and you have militias that are squaring off against Daesh, principally in the area around Sirte in the center of the country. Those militias are not yet integrated into a Libyan national force. So sharing arms or assisting those groups on the ground would be a complicated and difficult endeavor. In some cases, however, there are those sub-state actors who are in the best position to confront ISIL. So navigating that landscape while ensuring that those arms would not transfer over to ISIL would be a significant task and very difficult one.
I want to shift gears a little bit. Maybe this is out of the realm a little bit, but I'm from San Bernardino County. And obviously we had a very difficult, horrific situation involving a terrorist there. And the coordination of federal agencies with, and by the way, I was very, very happy with the way the FBI and the sheriff and the police chief, they all worked together. But in terms of, and then we had some problems with getting the data from the cell phone of one of the individuals, you know, Apple, and you've heard all that drama. Now, if you have information of something that would actually be affect us in the country here, how is that coordinated? And I know that's a very difficult question, but I get the feeling that we don't always have the best of coordination with federal agencies because everybody works in their own functional area or functional silo, and the word is not disseminated, and what happens is, boom, something like this happens, even though we might have had advance warning. If you could comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, sir, if you're speaking about coordination on the domestic level among the national security agencies or the law enforcement agencies, I may not be the best place to
No, I meant somebody that had ties to a terrorist country that,
yeah.
But eventually the terrorist incident actually happens. You know, we had this a few years ago when we were talking about the bombings in Boston and Chechnya, and we had talked about this previously, but
I would say that in my own experience, the counterterrorism community in the U.S. government is extremely well coordinated and integrated insofar as when there is an incident like the Boston Marathon bombers and the need to understand the linkages that might exist in a different country, same thing with the San Bernardino attack, there is very close cooperation between the FBI, the principal investigative arm of the U.S. government, and FBI agents who might be posted at our embassies abroad or representatives of the intelligence agencies who can help to pull back the threads on any connections. And that's always one of the very first questions, of course, that arises in a domestic terrorism incident. Is there a connection to an international organization, or is this directed by a group outside the United States? And particularly for these attacks like the one in San Bernardino, we see ISIL trying to inspire attacks. And those questions are always asked and then referred to the host country, where we work with the intelligence agencies and the law enforcement agencies in those countries to develop those threats.
Thank you. And I'm jumping around a little bit, but I always go back to Turkey. And it's not even Thanksgiving. Anyway, bad joke. Really concerned about the PKK, the Erdogan, and it's like, who's a terrorist and whether somebody's being falsely accused of being a terrorist. And obviously this affects the politics of that particular country, where you can use the counter-terrorist threat to carry out a political agenda. Would you want to comment on that, or is that too politically sensitive, or is that something that would fall under counterterrorism?
Well, I could say, sir, in general terms, on a global basis, we are quite concerned about how governments undertake their own counterterrorism efforts domestically. And those governments that might use counterterrorism as a justification for acts that transgress human rights or that are heavy-handed, let's say, in their security approach, might actually drive the grievances that are leading to the terrorism in the first place. So that's a conversation we have globally with many, many partners around the world, and it's something that we watch very closely.
I thank the gentleman. The committee may ask you to appear before the committee in a classified setting. Colonel Cook and a ranking member and others have raised some questions that we may want to get to the bottom of it. But I understand the situation, the classified setting, where some of these questions can be answered in, so we get to the bottom line of what's taking place. So thank you for being here today. You got a lot of work to do. You got a mess on your hands as far as all these bad guys all over the world causing mischief and taking the lives of innocents. It's a tough assignment. Anyway, there may be some other questions that we have for you that we will put in writing and we will send to you in addition to the possible classified setting. So without objection, all the witnesses' prepared statements will be part of the record. Members will have 5 days to submit statements, questions, and extraneous materials for the record, subject to the length limitation and the rules. And the subcommittee is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.